In terms of SFF builds, we have one contender that's constantly impressing us with the design, and well, basically it's really simple, to be honest, when we're talking about the outer design. But the inner part is what it is most important, because in SFF builds, as you know, orientation and the configuration of the components and how they're placed inside is quite important to get the maximum out of the space that you have. So right here we have a sunny side up design MESHROOM S V2, because you remember I did a review of V1, and right here it's version 2 basically, because we have some differences. It's not 15 liters, it's 14.9, but you get more room for a graphic card. And what I notice is you get a bunch of holes at the back to give you possibilities for, I don't know, pumps, additional pumps, radiators, what else could it be? Graphic card, vertical, horizontal, however you wish. And it kind of, even though it's 0.1 liter less, it looks like it's a bit spacious, more spacious, I would say. But regardless of that, let's dive in and check out the SSUPD MESHROOM S version 2. Now, if you remember the version 1 that I did, it's quite simple basically. You just have to remove the side panels. Here we go. This is one side panel. You have the top panel as well. You just pop out the pegs, and that's basically it. There's nothing else to do. You don't have to use your screwdriver unless you're, for instance, placing a power supply, motherboard, AIO, or graphic card. That's it. Those are the only screws, and you basically do that on every single case. But let's start with some basics, okay? So it supports ATX, ITX motherboards as well, and when we're talking about ATX motherboards, you're automatically sacrificing the front radiator or fan mount and takes out the whole space. With the ATX motherboard, you can only go with SFX power supply, because what it does is you have two positions for the SFX power supply. And honestly, since it's perforated steel that acts as a dust filter and a nice ventilation, you can push the power supply to the near edge of the case. This gives you a possibility, this gives you space basically to push the ATX motherboard fully, and the only thing that is going to be covered are some PCI lanes and of course the bottom part of the M.2, which isn't even hard to access because you only have to untie 4 screws to remove the power supply to access those additional M.2 SSDs. On the other side, what I mentioned is that they gave more space for the GPU. And they stated it can go up to 4 slots and the height up to 353 millimeters. What I did is I used my Supreme X 4070 Ti, and it's a bit bulky. It sticks out just enough to push the side panel out, so it doesn't fit. But when we're talking about the height and how I actually placed it inside, you do have to remove this top bar on the other side where the GPU goes to be able to push in the GPU. That is the only way to actually place that large GPU. Other than that, everything else fits. So since the RTX 4070 Ti Supreme X doesn't fit, I placed the Sapphire Radeon RX 7900 XT Pulse and paired it up with the 7600X, which kind of fits quite nicely. Now, in terms of main features, as already stated, it supports ATX motherboards. If you go with an ATX motherboard, you can't go with the ATX power supply. But if you go with an ITX motherboard, you can go with ATX up to 170 millimeters. If you remember my past case, well, basically not the MESHROOM, but Meshalicious, I did a custom loop inside. And what this case tells me, in terms of looking at it as such and placing all the stuff that I did in here and actually placing the extenders. So what you could do here is a nice custom loop. If you go with nicely designed the GPU water block, you can actually go with 2 radiators, one on front, one on the side, and next to that second radiator you can place the GPU with the water block, so it Actually, what it depends on the GPU is where the fittings are placed, where the inlet and outlet are placed. Now, apart from that, it has flexible storage, so it allows for up to 2 hard drives at the same time and supports 3 2.5-inch SSD with full-length GPU. So it also has a stronger ventilation because of the all-around mesh panels. It supports up to 2 140mm fans in front and one 120mm slim fan on top, and you can add 2 extra 60mm fans at the rear where you would usually place the GPU horizontally. Now for the horizontal GPU, I just want to mention the dimensions. You can place an SFF GPU up to 211mm of length. The GPU, as already stated, when it goes vertically, it can go up to 4 slots, 353mm in length and 152mm in depth. But what happens here? If you place a radiator on front, and if you go with such wide GPU, the power connector for the 12VH PWR has to bend a bit too much. So what I would suggest here in this scenario, if you really decide to go with such a design, with such a case, I would definitely suggest grabbing those 90-degree angled adapters for the 12VH PWR from CableMod. Now they would definitely make here a difference because it does kind of help with cable management and not bending the 12VH PWR. So yeah, there's that. When we're talking about the I/O ports, we have one USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-C and two USB 3.0. Maximum what you could do is 4 times 2.5-inch SSDs, or if you have a horizontal SFF GPU, you can actually place 8 times 2.5-inch SSDs. On the front you can mount either 2 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans, and with the right side fan mounts, which you also get, but I removed them because of the GPU, you can place 2 120 or 2 140mm fans with 2.5 slot, so basically 52mm GPU in 4-slot GPU mode. At the rear I/O ports, well, we basically only have power on button, which I think somebody asked me about that in my past video, and it's such a small case, it's really not a strange thing to access the power button at the back. So if you take a look at it, if you take a look at it like this, you only do this to power it on. And that's all there is to it. So as you can see, the GPU goes here. I have cable extenders from CableMod placed inside without any problems. And the reason for that, and I'll tell you what I would suggest. If you guys decide to go with this case, I would definitely suggest a power supply such as the Cooler Master V1100 watts, because it's really thin, it's really small, it's really compact, I have to admit that. And you have like maybe 1.5 centimeters here between the middle plate of the case and the power supply. This is where you can hide here the original cables, and if you want, even though this is a mesh panel and you can't see anything through it, but if you really like those nice lift cables and if you really want to have it look quite nice, then this is the way to go. This is where you can hide the cables, connect everything nicely, use a bit of a zip ties to mount it properly, to mount the cables so they don't go into the fans and stuff like that. You have brackets for 240 radiator on front, or if you remove it, you can place a 280. It's all up to you to decide. I think last time I did the 280 radiator from EK, and now we have Gamdia's Xion M3 240 or something like that. I can't remember actually. We have here AMD Ryzen 5 7600X, as already stated. You know, the GPU, the power supply is right here, ITX motherboard, 240 radiator, CableMod lift cables, everything fits nicely. And as you can see, even the tubes have a nice natural bend without doing some crazy bends in terms of last time what I did, and it was totally my mistake. So yeah, PCI brackets here at the back for the vertical GPU. You have loads of holes, and what this gives you an opportunity is to either place some SFF pump press combos, for instance, or what you could do is place those two 60mm fans right here at the back, which have enough holes to be placed as such, giving some additional exhaust for the GPU because they can fit with the GPU inside, since you have around 3 centimeters of space. Another cool thing is they installed a bracket for the SFX or ATX power supply. Now this bracket gives you an option to swap the position of the SFX power supply, as already stated at some point of the video, or you can remove that bracket. So it's all up to you. It's quite outstanding case. At the bottom you have also possibilities to mount SSDs, pumps, and similar stuff like that. So basically what we got is an upgraded version from the version 1. You have a possibility for a thicker and longer GPU, which is outstanding, of course. And I totally forgot about the legs. I left the legs in the bags, so yeah. But regardless to that, let's check some benchmarks. Now, you'll be surprised because the results I got with the 240 on 7600X compares to some cases where I use 360 in a much larger case. The issue with those other cases is that 240 in this case gives the cooling for 7600X to perform as a 360. So in AIDA 64, the thermals on the processor went up to 88 degrees Celsius with the clock speed up to 5400 megahertz. Now the GPU went up to 52. Now imagine that, 52 on the GPU. This is insane. At full load AIDA 64, everything was ticked, and I mean, what's there left to say? Now in Cinebench, this is where it gets more interesting, because the scores in Cinebench with everything that I did, so 10 consecutive tests, not constant but consecutive in terms, I need to collect scores and then I have to repeat the test. So we have 87 degrees Celsius going throughout the whole 10 consecutive tests. We have clock speeds of the CPU starting at 5300, and that repeats on the next 2 benchmarks, and then after that the next 7 go up to 5275, which is quite solid and quite okay. But the scores are the ones that really impressed me. So 14,638 was the first one, then we go up to 14,636. We have some ups and downs, but the main thing that you need to know is that it's consistent around 14,600s, and it goes up and down by 100, maybe even less, but that's totally fine, and I would say it's really good because it gives the consistency in performance for the CPU. Outstanding. I would say the thermals are great, and I'm quite shocked, but in some terms I'm not. It's a strange situation because I wouldn't expect the case such as this has such low thermals, lower than in a standard case with 7 fans. So yeah, I mean that's something quite interesting. And with the PSU manufacturers, you can place 1100 watts inside the case, power up RTX 4000 series or Radeon RX 7900 XT or XTX. It's all up to you to decide. And with the 240 or 280, I mean, you can definitely place a much stronger CPU here and enjoy your gaming with a nice subtle design, with a nice clean looks, perforated steel. What's there left to say? Now, since I reviewed all their cases, and I think I didn't give them any PC Crazy badge at all, and it wasn't me taking a grudge on something because they didn't do anything wrong. Actually, they did everything right, and it's right here. This is the version 2 of the MESHROOM S, and honestly, I think you'll agree with me that this one deserves a PC Crazy Hall of Fame badge and PC Crazy Performance badge, actually. I was thinking maybe approved badge because of everything, and that I would definitely recommend it, but I do recommend it, don't get me wrong, I do recommend this case. If you're looking for a SFF build, this is the case to go with. But I would say performance badge, because the GPU is lower than in a standard case, the thermals, it performs quite nicely, and the CPU acts as it has a 360 cooler on it and performs outstanding in AIDA 64, and of course, well, when we compare the clock speed and stuff like that, and it performs outstanding in Cinebench. And I can only imagine if Cinebench and AIDA didn't push it in terms of heating it up, I don't think any game would do the same. So guys, this is definitely those two badges, so Hall of Fame and Performance, and I'll place the links below in the description if this is something that you're interested, because Why search the web when you can click the link in the description, right? And finally, if you liked everything you saw, don't forget to subscribe, helps a lot. And don't forget to like the video and click the notification bell for future content. Thank you for watching. This was SSUPD or Sunny Side Up Design MESHROOM S version 2. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. Bye bye guys.